Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about the most famous symbols of ancient Egypt, the pyramids. So, let's get started. First of all, what are pyramids? Well, they are monumental stone structures built as tombs for the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. They were constructed during the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom, which was from roughly 2700 to 1700 BCE. Most of them can be found at the Giza Plateau, which is just outside of Cairo. But you can also find them in other places like Saqqara, Dashur, and so on. In total, there are over 100 pyramids that remain in Egypt, although many more were probably built. Unfortunately, though, most of them are in very bad shape, especially because they were robbed many times in the past. But why did the ancient Egyptians build them? Well, if you ask me, this question has two answers. On the one hand, we have the simple answer, which is to impress us today. And it's true. We always get amazed by their size and perfect geometry when we see them. But for the Egyptians themselves, they were much more than just impressive structures. Pyramids were seen as houses for the dead pharaohs. In fact, that was their final resting place. The word pyramid even comes from the Greek word pyramis, which means that the Egyptians called them eternal. And indeed, the pyramids were meant to last forever. That was possible thanks to the Egyptians' belief system. They believed that after death, the soul would continue to live and that the body had to be preserved somehow. So they mummified the dead bodies, and then they put those mummies inside of these giant monuments. But not only that, since the pharaohs were considered divine, they had to stay close to the sun, god Ra. You see, the Egyptians worshipped many gods, but the most important of them all was the sun god, who was the source of life and everything good. Therefore, it was common for the kings to claim that they were descended from Ra himself, and he was often depicted as a falcon or a falcon-headed man. So building huge structures made out of stone, which would stay strong even after thousands of years, was a way to honor the sun god and also to make sure that the pharaoh would reach him after death. The biggest pyramid in Egypt, as well as the world, is the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was built for Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled during the 4th dynasty. It was built around 2560 BCE. For a long time, people thought that its name was Cheops, but that's actually a corrupted version of the Greek name for Khufu. Because of its size and importance, the Great Pyramid of Giza will be the main focus of this video, so pay attention. According to historians, it took 20,000 workers around 20 years to finish construction, which would mean that each pyramidion took around 4 years to be built. It's also said that it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And let me tell you, it truly deserves this title. The Great Pyramid of Giza has 4 sides, each one being around 755 feet high. It's also known as the oldest pyramid in Giza, standing majestically in the center of 3 pyramids built for 3 successive pharaohs of the 4th dynasty. Next to it, there's the smaller pyramid of Khafra, which was built for Pharaoh Khafra, who ruled from 2558 to 2532 BCE. If you look closely, you will notice that next to the second pyramid, there's also the Sphinx, which is a giant statue with a lion's body and a human head. The 3rd pyramid was built for Menkaure, and it was the smallest of them all. These 3 pyramids were built on the Giza Plateau, which was chosen carefully by the priests because it was considered sacred. It was located at the edge of the desert where the sun rises and sets. This was very important because it showed that the pharaoh was connected to the sun god Ra. Also, there was water nearby. So, yeah, this place was perfect. How were the pyramids built? Well, even today, nobody knows for sure how the pyramids were built. However, recent discoveries might shed some light on this mystery. So, here's what we know so far. First of all, the blocks used to build the pyramids weighed tons. Yes, tons. It's estimated that the entire structure contains around 2.5 million limestone blocks. Later, granite was also used. Then, workers cut the blocks using copper tools. The blocks were transported using ramps, sleds, and manpower. Each block was placed precisely using a sophisticated system of ropes and levers. It took around 40,000 workers around 20 years to finish construction. Every year, the workers finished a layer of stones and then they rested. Maybe they celebrated, After each layer was finished, a team of astronomers would measure the sides of the pyramid to make sure that it was perfectly aligned with the cardinal points. Then they would add another layer of stones. What about the interior? What's inside the pyramids? There are many chambers, passageways, air shafts, and so on. For example, the Great Pyramid contains several chambers. One of them is the Queen's Chamber, which was probably used to bury the wife of Khufu. Then there's the King's Chamber, which contains a granite sarcophagus. However, no mummies have been found inside of the pyramids. Even if you take into account the untold riches and treasures that were probably buried with the pharaohs, you must understand that robbing the pyramids was a lucrative business throughout history. The first person who systematically robbed them was an unknown Arab. He entered the pyramids through underground tunnels that he dug using pickaxes. He stole treasures and mummies and sold them to international dealers. And unfortunately, he wasn't the only one. Let's go back to the Great Pyramid of Giza and see what we know about it. As I said before, it was built as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu. Its sides were originally white, shiny limestone, but now they are covered in rough stones. There are no decorations left because they were taken away long ago. It's estimated that the construction began around 2560 BCE, and it was finished around 2540 BCE. The construction stopped mysteriously, and nobody knows why. It's possible that Khufu died, and his successor decided not to finish the monument. Some historians believe that the pyramid was meant to be even higher, but we don't know for sure. The Great Pyramid of Giza is also known as the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. According to Herodotus, the second wonder of the world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, were created by King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. The other 5 wonders were the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Temple of Artemis, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Why were the pyramids aligned with the cardinal points? Well, it seems that the Egyptians liked to align their buildings with the directions north, east, south, and west. This allowed them to determine the cardinal points and then use them to build their monuments. It was easier to do that with the help of the stars, especially with the Big Dipper constellation, whose stars were pretty bright at night. Also, this was related to the Egyptians' belief system, since they believed that the soul of the deceased had to travel safely to the afterlife. Therefore, aligning the pyramids with the cardinal points ensured that the soul could reach the underworld easily. The Great Pyramid of Giza is perhaps the best example of such precision, since its sides are almost perfectly aligned to the north, southeast, west directions. This is such an amazing coincidence that it makes us wonder if someone visited from the future and taught the ancient Egyptians how to use a compass. Anyway, thanks to these alignments, we know exactly where the pyramids were built. You may be surprised to learn that the Sphinx was built later than the Great Pyramid. It was constructed around 2050 BCE and was built for Pharaoh Khafra. It's possible that its head was designed in his likeness, but this is just a theory. Nobody knows for sure who the Sphinx represents. Inside the pyramids, there were usually some hieroglyphs, which were the Egyptians' writing system. These hieroglyphs helped the dead pharaoh to identify himself and also gave instructions to the workers who would rob the tomb. Yeah, I wish there were more examples of pyramids well preserved today, but sadly, there aren't any. I think that the pyramids are not only symbols of ancient Egypt, but also symbols of human achievement. They show us what humans are capable of and also remind us of how little we know about our world. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.